Hi, this is Gary with MacMOST.com. Today I'm going to try to predict what Apple will be doing in 2021. MacMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 800 supporters. Go to MacMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So what can we expect from Apple in 2021? I think some things are pretty clear and obvious, but others are going to be harder to predict. First, let's start with Macs. In 2020 we saw the release of the first M1 Macs using Apple's own system-on-a-chip ARM processors. Of course, this means the end of Intel processors on Macs, so you can expect there will be no more new Macs using Intel processors. In 2020 we saw the first 3 Macs appear using these new processors. The MacBook Air, the low-end MacBook Pro, and the Mac Mini. In 2021 we're going to get the majority of the rest of the Macs. So you're going to see iMacs and the higher-end MacBook Pros now with Apple's new processors. But I don't think you're going to see them with the M1 processor. You're going to see the next chip. I don't know what it's going to be called, the M1A, the M1X, the M2, but it's going to be even more powerful than the M1, which has surprised everybody in what it can do. So at some point we're going to see both the smaller and larger screened iMacs with these new processors. Probably the same one, so the difference will be the screen there. Then you're going to see the higher end MacBook Pros, including the 16-inch model, get probably that same processor. If the M1 chip had 8 cores in it, maybe the next version will have 16 cores, maybe 16 or 32 GPU cores. Or maybe it'll just have a faster clock speed, although clock speed isn't something Apple talks about anymore. So by the end of the year we're going to see a majority of the Mac models using Apple's new chips. The only ones left out will be the Mac Pro and the iMac Pro. I don't think we'll see those in 2021. I think Apple needs to produce a third chip, maybe something with 32 cores in it for those machines. Maybe we'll get an announcement that it's coming, but I think those will be 2022. So when will these machines come out? Well, Apple traditionally announces things sometimes in March, sometimes in June with the Worldwide Developers Conference, and then is pretty quiet through the summer with more announcements through the fall. It feels like it might be too early to see new Macs in March. After all, these are completely new chip designs Apple's coming out with, and they just came out with the M1. So hopefully we'll be surprised by some new models in March, but I'm thinking it's more likely that we'll see them in June. Now another thing talked about is whether or not new Macs will have a redesign. Whether they'll look the same as the old Intel models, just as the MacBook Air and the low-end MacBook Pro do, even though there's a new chip inside. Some people predict there will be a new design, but I kind of doubt it. I think Apple will stick with the same design and work on the new internal parts first, and then get everybody excited again in 22 or 23 for really cool new designs for the MacBooks and iMacs. But I don't feel really strongly about that. Apple is often unpredictable when it comes to designs, so they may surprise us with a new design to either the iMac or maybe the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Other new hardware should include new iPad Pros. Apple's due for that. The iPad Air is actually using a newer processor than the current iPad Pro. So I definitely think it's time for the iPad Pro to leapfrog past the iPad Air with a new processor and perhaps even a new screen, a mini LED screen. Apple's been doing a lot of things in the last few years with new types of screen technologies, although most consumers haven't really been paying attention to it. And it seems like everybody thinks mini LED will make its debut in the new iPad Pros at some point. Maybe we'll see those in March. And probably later in the year we might see other iPad models, like maybe a new iPad mini. Now we know Apple comes out with a new iPhone every year, so in September or October we should see the new iPhone 13. But what will be new about it? I mean, there'll probably be small improvements to it, but will there be any big new features? Maybe in the camera. There's been a lot of talk about Apple coming out with something new in terms of a telephoto lens. I really think that's the only thing missing from the iPhone as a camera is the option to have a really good telephoto lens. I mean 2 or 2.5x really doesn't compare to what you can get in a cheap camera with real optics. So there's been some talk about Apple figuring out how to get like a 10x lens into an iPhone. That would certainly make me excited about it. Also, the MagSafe connector on the back of the iPhone has proven to be a hit. So it's now really possible for Apple to maybe come out with a completely wireless iPhone. One that doesn't have any port at all on it. And it relies completely on using the MagSafe adapter on the back for charging and wireless for data transfer. Maybe we'll see Apple test that out with one of the lower end models. Another thing Apple does every year is the Worldwide Developers Conference. That always takes place in June, and I expect it to happen this year too. Now, in 2020, it was different because it was virtual. that ended up actually being pretty good because the problem with WWDC is way more people want to go to it than there's actually room for. So it's kind of a lottery for getting in. But when it was virtual, all the developers were able to attend the sessions without having to get lucky and get a ticket or travel anywhere. I think June might be too soon for Apple to actually go back to an in-person WWDC, and I think they liked how the virtual one went. So maybe that might become permanent, but I definitely think it will happen this year virtually. The only difference may be that the keynote event may include a small audience. Although I think Apple really enjoyed having the pre-recorded keynotes. They were able to do a lot more with those. And there really isn't a strong reason to go with a live audience, especially when you're dealing with one of the world's largest corporations making significant announcements. At WWDC, we'll find out a little bit about the new version of macOS and the new version of iOS that will come out later in the year. Other new hardware we may see in 2021 might include new AirPods. They may look like the AirPods Pro, just not have any of the AirPods Pro features. In other words, use that design but not the noise canceling and other features. There are also some rumors about a new Apple TV, and one is due. I don't think this is going to look any different, but it may have a slightly different remote as they continue to refine that. And it also may be more geared towards games. So there might be more attention paid to the processor inside of the Apple TV. And we may even have the option to buy a game controller with it. It may be Apple's own game controller design or maybe a third-party game controller that Apple sells as part of a package. I really think they're going to want to push Apple Arcade as being one of the primary features of a new Apple TV this year. Now all of this has been relatively obvious, but what completely new products may Apple come out with? Here's some wild speculation. One is AirTags. This rumor has been around for a few years that Apple's going to come out with a small little rechargeable device that you could stick onto anything and then be able to track it. You can put them on your keychain, you can put them on your dog's collar, you can do whatever you want with them. Other companies have products like this and Apple has the software built into the Apple ecosystem for this. So maybe we'll finally see them in 2021. It seems like the new AirPods Max, the over-the-ear headphones, are kind of a hit. At $549, they're kind of expensive and really meant for high-end listening. But Apple could come out with a mid-range version of those. Something that's maybe $250. Doesn't include all the features, but is the same basic design. So it's easy to forget that Apple actually does produce a screen. They produce the $6,000 6K high-end Pro screen. So that leaves any Mac users that want a second screen for the MacBook Pro or a screen from Apple for their Mac Mini out in the cold. You've got to get a third-party screen. But Apple produces a really nice 27-inch screen inside the iMac. So maybe 2021 will be the year that Apple comes out with kind of a mid-range screen. You can get a 4K screen now for $300, maybe a little more for better quality. So I think the market is there for Apple to come out with something maybe the $500 to $600 range that has an Apple design to it and connects and works really well with MacBooks. So those are my predictions for Apple in 2021. I want to hear your predictions too. Share them in the comments below. I publish new tutorials every weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. Then hit the little bell icon to get notifications for each new tutorial.